Good morning. My name is Ro Kelly, and I will be your liturgist this morning. I'm joined by Reverend Krista Taves and our Sunday pastoral care provider, Sharon Morgan, for this morning's worship. Thank you to David for our prelude. Our leaders of the Chalice Chapel Choir are ill this morning. Eliot Unitarian Chapel is a liberal religious community bound by courageous love, committed to spiritual growth, and dedicated to inspiring compassionate action. We welcome you in the fullness of who you are: your race, ethnicity, class, sexual identity, gender identity, ability, family structure, and religious or spiritual background. If you are joining us for the first time, thank you for coming, and we welcome you to our beloved community. Please make sure to fill out a guest form so we can stay in touch. If you have kids, please make sure to fill out both sides of that guest form. Where is the guest form? There is a QR code on your order of service, and there are also physical copies at both entrances. Then, dear guests, please join us for our coffee hour after service in Adams Hall, and please make sure to take a blue cup so that we can welcome you personally. If you are online, you can join us on the online coffee hour at 1 p.m. For those of you who don't know or who may like a reminder, the flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. We light our chalice when we gather so we can signify that we are entering sacred space. This is because the bowl represents depth and openness of beloved community, and the flame represents the spark of the divine in each one of us. This morning's chalice lighting words come to us from Reverend Dr. David Breeden, who said, "Welcome to this space, where what was fixed begins to shift, where rigidity embraces unfolding as we join in the dance of transformation. Welcome to this moment of change, where we transfigure and transcend together." Please rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn, number 208, "Every Time I Feel the Spirit."
Good morning. My name is Susan Bell, and I chair the pledge drive this year. And last Sunday, we kicked it off with a great start to the pledge drive. And as a result, our pledges have jumped from 32 pledges up to 75 pledges, with a grand total money of $239,800 239,876. But we have a long ways to go. Each Sunday, for the next 3 to 4 Sundays, we'll have a member of our congregation tell us a little bit about why they've joined Eliot and why they pledge. So this Sunday, we have Kathy Converse, who will be reading her story as far as why she's joined Eliot and why she pledges. Kathy.
Thank you, Susan. My name is Kathy Converse, and I've been a member of Eliot Chapel for almost 8 years. When I first joined, I pledged a really minimal amount to Eliot. For a couple of years, I doubled that amount each year until I was giving a slightly less minimal amount. Numbers run themselves, and I believe that Eliot is a worthwhile and deserving organization that has made a difference in my life and in the lives of many others, both members and non-members. I wanted to give more generously, but for some reason I was stuck at my then modest level of giving. I brought this up with my financial advisor, and he recommended I consider donating appreciated securities, such as stocks or mutual funds, each year. This allows me to avoid the capital gains tax that I would owe if I sold the security myself. As a charity, Eliot Chapel is not subject to the capital gains tax, so they receive the full market value of the donation, and I also get a tax deduction for the full amount. Works for me and the church. Seeing this as a win-win, I arranged to have some of my mutual fund shares, to give some of my mutual fund shares to Eliot for my annual pledge commitment. I quickly found that this was a painless way to give, and I felt compelled to give much more generously than I had in the past. Now I feel good about the degree to which I can support Eliot each year in its mission to create a just world through vibrant, beloved community. If you're interested in this sort of donation, please speak with your financial advisor to see if it makes sense for you. When you're ready, contact Brian Franklin, the Director of Congregational Administration, and he'll set up everything from Eliot's end. I'm really happy that I found a path to give more generously. It's great to know that there are many different ways to give. Thank you. And now I invite you to join with me in reading our congregational covenant, which holds up how we care for each other and this beloved community. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
Thank you, Kathy. And now I'd like to call the children forward for our wisdom story. And my assistant, Sarah. Sorry. Nadia. I called you by our previous choir director's name. I called you Sarah. Now, tonight is a very special night in the Muslim faith. Does anyone know what starts tonight? Yes, that's right. Ramadan starts tonight. Did you know that 1/3 of the world's people are Muslim? The population of the world is 7,888,000,000 people, which means that makes the Muslim population 2,667,000,000 people. Can you imagine that many people? That's a lot of people. And for those people, Ramadan is a very, very special month. You eat in the evening and in the morning. You fast during the day. You pray a lot. You are generous with everything you have. And at night, there is a big feast with people you care about. What's not to like? Now, the goal of Ramadan is to become quieter inside and more connected to God. Quieter inside for each individual person, but also quieter as a people and ready to receive the blessings of the God you believe in, which some of us here call a love that is greater than we can imagine. And today we're going to try and get a little bit of the feeling that can come with Ramadan. And this concept was shared with me by Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Sarah Scotchko. So, to get ready, let's make sure we're seated comfortably, just like we often do for our prayer. Okay? And let's think about our lives and how busy and how full our lives get. There's always one more thing, right? So let's think about our day from the start to almost the end. So first, you wake up in the morning. Then you have breakfast. Keep going. Then you get dressed. Maybe you go to school or daycare. You learn or play. You have lunch. You learn or play some more. You go home. You have dinner. And then you do your homework or your chores, or you play video games or live stream your favorite show, and bit by bit it gets louder and faster and louder in your mind. Let's listen to how loud it becomes in our minds. And sometimes this can be really fun, but sometimes it gets a little tiring to be this full. And during Ramadan, prayer, generosity, and community, one by one, the bells are silenced. Until it may actually become silent. This is what Ramadan can feel like. And that's the end of the story. Let's sing you off to your classes. I invite you to join with me in the spirit of prayer or meditation as you are willing and able, placing your feet or on the ground or however you place yourselves to be centered and grounded. You may hold your hands on your lap to experience the quietness that we so often wait for in our minds and in our lives. Today, our prayer is called Ramadan Home by Samar El-Baiti, a UU Muslim of Iraqi descent. Ramadan, you bathe me in your moonlight as I kiss the ground in gratitude for you. The neighborhood is still. The dreamers, lost in the movies in their minds, have no knowledge of the dawn, of the sliver of light that gazes towards us, reminding us that hope resides in prayer. My lips drip with the watermelon juices, reddish pink like blood, but sweet like life. Thirst suppressed for the moment, as my desert-parched lips cracked from giving up, letting go of desire, of need, over and over again. Each day tastes the momentary, moistening miracle provided by you. And each bite tantalizes my tongue, while the fragrance of date palms tickle my nose and fronds awaken yearnings once again. And you and I, beloved, I and you, become one. It is as if the breath of cardamom whispers the name we long to know. Allahu, Allahu, Allahu. And my body returns, my heart remembers, and Ramadan, never forgotten, entices me back to love, and I am home once again. Let us enter into a moment of silence. Let us speak into the silence the names of those we would hold in care. We too are home once again. Amen and blessed be. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our meditative hymn, number 180.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me? Is this on? It is. Hi, good morning. Good morning. So from what I understand, this hymn is newer to this congregation, but it is around, so it does require multiple groups to participate. So the way that I would like to do this first is we're going to have David play through it once, and then we'll all sing it together, and then I will identify groups for the round. For the round, we'll do like.
Told you to stand out.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Wait, hold. Oh, go ahead and sit. Go ahead and be seated. So for groups, we'll do like this half, and then this half, and then the balcony up there. For the groups, when we do break into the rounds, we'll do it 3 times. And when you get to your last higher note, you'll just hold that until everybody is finished. I will do my best to make that apparent. Everybody join me. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Every week, we give away half of our offering to an organization in the community that lives our core values. This month, our shared plate partner is Circle of Concern. Circle of Concern is a food pantry plus, where feeding families is just the beginning. In addition to healthy food choices, COC provides counseling, mentoring, financial help, scholarships, and more to the communities of Kirkwood, Parkway, Valley Park, Rockwood, Benton, and High Ridge. Let us be a generous people. Please join me in dedicating this offering with the words printed in your order of service. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. For most Muslims around the world, the month of Ramadan marks a yearly renewal, a time to turn inward in spiritual reflection, upward to God in worship, and outward toward other human beings in acts of charity. It is a time when many Muslims who do not offer the 5 required daily prayers or have much to do with religion for the rest of the year still refrain from food, drink, and sex during the daylight hours of an entire lunar month for the sake of God. Among the 5 pillars of Islam, it is the fast of Ramadan, not the daily prayers, that is the most universally observed Muslim practice worldwide, behind only belief in God and the Prophet Muhammad. People will fill mosques at night to offer extra prayers in congregation, and some even spend all or most of the last 10 days of Ramadan in a state of spiritual seclusion, following the example of the Prophet. It is a month when many Muslims pay their yearly required alms, or zakat, and when generosity reaches its peak in Muslim societies, especially through giving free break-fast meals, or iftar, to the poor. The Ramadan fast is marked by its anonymity and its intimacy with God. The Prophet said that God says, quote, "Every good deed is rewarded 10 times its like, up to 700 times, except for fasting. Fasting is for me, and I will reward it," end quote. No one but God can see you fast. The Prophet said that, especially while fasting, one should not shout or return insults, but should respond to an abuser by saying, "I am fasting, I am fasting." Just a day without food, and one realizes how fragile the body is, how it becomes harder not only to move, but even to think. It is a bodily experience of emptiness and poverty that Sufi Muslims say should be the state of the soul before God at all times. Muslims are reminded of the dependence of human beings upon that which is other than themselves for their happiness, and through the daily Ramadan ritual, they practice breaking free of even their wholesome and illicit desires in order to turn inward. It is an exercise of the spiritual heart overcoming the ego.
That was wonderful. Thank you. On April 26th, 2021, history was made in the English Premier League. On that night, Leicester City and Crystal Palace were scheduled to play, but Leicester City defender Wesley Fofana was fasting for Ramadan. The game began just before sunset, which meant that Fofana would have been fasting more than 12 hours, which is a long time for anyone, but it's especially long for a soccer player who would need to eat very intentionally and often to have enough calories to sustain them through practice and competition. So the game was starting when Fofana was at his weakest. But for the first time in the history of the league, the game was paused just as the sun set. And while Crystal Palace goalkeeper, while he held onto the ball for a full minute, Fofana left the field to break his fast and then came back to the field and continued to play. And for many fans, this was their first exposure to Ramadan, the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, the month that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, the month that fasting, prayer, and generosity for the most vulnerable are brought to the forefront, with the goal of gradually emptying your mind, emptying your body and your soul, becoming quieter in yourself and centered with God. I'm imagining the minute that the goalkeeper held the ball. A minute is a long time in soccer, a long time. And I wonder if that minute became an unexpected moment of calm, at least for some. I think about how fast many of our lives are, not only with work and lists of things to do, but meals, taking care of those who depend on you, taking care of yourself, taking care of our finances, taking care of our minds, and all the different ways that we are asked to be present to this world. We are often so overstimulated in this time and age. Can you imagine all that stimulation just stopping for a whole minute? I know some of us would give anything for a whole minute where everything just stopped, right? Now today I want to carefully explore the quietness of the heart that the month of Ramadan invites us to journey towards. And I say carefully explore because I am not Muslim. The vast majority of us here are not Muslim, nor is it our background. So whenever approaching a religion and culture that is not our own, it's important to be respectful and recognize that we will never understand or experience it like someone who is Muslim or has been Muslim. And it's also important to recognize that not all Muslims experience Ramadan or its promise of quietness the same way. But it is also true that a yearning for quietness of the heart and mind is something that transcends every religion, every ethnicity, every culture. Who among us has not yearned for a quietness that leaves us free, where the bells silence one by one until it is quiet? We live in a very loud world. We are a divided country. Many of us are already protecting our ears and eyes and minds from the dissonances that are breaking our hearts, whether that dissonance is in ourselves, our families, our communities, our nation, our world, and our earth. So let's look at the path that Ramadan offers towards us, towards this quietness that we yearn for. And I want to explore it first from a personal perspective, but then also from a larger social and political perspective. So let's start with the personal. First, there is time intentionally set aside. A full 30 days, and within each day, there is what happens at night and what happens during the day. And it's not a random time, because often quietness isn't something that just happens unless you make room for it. And I'm not just talking about quietness as no sound. A mind and body can be plenty loud just on their own. We all know that. And then there is fasting, which it's important to note is not expected of children, not expected of those who are ill and those who are pregnant or breastfeeding. But for everyone else, fasting is about intentionally welcoming hunger and thirst so that as your body yearns for drink and yearns for food, your heart will open and those who suffer, your heart will open to those who suffer unjustly. And in that openness, God will become closer. The body becomes quite loud when it's hungry and thirsty, but day by day, the body goes quieter, allowing the mind to grow quieter, with finally the ego becoming quieter as well. And that growing quietness is shaped by prayer, guided by prayer, given meaning by prayer, layers upon layers of prayer. Sometimes observed alone, sometimes with family, sometimes with the crowds in the street. And with these prayers, you gradually set yourself to the side and make room for everyone around you and for God. Quietness is also sought through generosity, by serving the suffering and literally emptying your pockets. Money is continuously given away, which is another form of quieting. And finally, the quietness is pursued through joy, especially when the fast is broken at sunset. There can be feasts every night. And while some choose to go into seclusion for Ramadan, for most, it is a community time. It is a family time. It is a time for enjoying the bounty of the table and in rejoicing that night has come. So these are 5 ways that quietness is pursued through Ramadan: an intentional time, chosen suffering, prayer, generosity, and joy. How does this feel to you? Is this something that you could see fitting into your life in some way? I mean, I imagine that some of us are translating what this might look like for ourselves, especially those of us who don't have a God in our spirituality or theology, or where, for instance, suffering is part of your life. Why would you want more of it? Right? Where might we carve out the intentional time? It doesn't have to be 30 days, but what time is meaningful for you? What kind of chosen suffering would be meaningful to you, would open your heart? Not the kind of suffering that puts you in danger or diminishes you, but rather would open you up. And what are you ready to give away? Just give away for the love of others. And finally, who are your people? Who would you want to feast with? The people where your anxieties and worries can be set aside, where you could simply be and rejoice in the time together. So much to consider, but perhaps not too much, given how much many of us yearn for that quietness and sense of connection to everything. But there's one thing we haven't touched on yet about this path to quietness. And that's that in Islam, there is a different sense of self than that there is in much of Western culture. While Ramadan is certainly a time to connect with yourself, it's not just a personal quietness that is sought after, although that can certainly happen. It's instead the larger purpose is to connect with a larger sense of being than just what is taking place in your particular life. Ramadan is not only about personal fulfillment and personal peace. There is a larger collective sense, and that's why the path of Ramadan can be applied in such a bigger way that is way beyond just our own individual lives, but to our lives as a people, to our lives as citizens of the world. And today, as 1/3 of the world's people wait for sunset, I want us to consider how the path of Ramadan might help us also find some insight in what might be able to free both Palestine and Israel from the cycle of violence that has imprisoned the region for millennia. What we're seeing today didn't just start on October 7th. It didn't even start in 1948 when Israel was created. It didn't even start when Western powers started messing with the region because of its natural resource, although it sure has made it worse. Maybe it started when both Islam and Judaism offered scriptures justifying that the land could only belong to one people. And I know this is a tender place to go, and I certainly have meditated on it a lot this week, because we have people of different backgrounds and opinions in this congregation. We have people who are personally and directly affected by what is happening in Israel-Palestine. Some of you are of Muslim background, and there are thousands of years of history imprinted on you, thousands of years of persecution that are both a source of sorrow and identity. And some of you are of Jewish background, and there are also thousands of years of history imprinted on you, thousands of years of persecution that are both a source of sorrow and identity. There are deeply rooted hatreds, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, that can make it feel very risky to express sympathy beyond your group, lest those sympathies be taken advantage of. And for those of us who are not Jewish or Muslim, there is the very real danger of putting our foot in our mouths, of taking positions in ways that become anti-Semitic and Islamophobic, despite our best intentions. We can't even agree on language. What qualifies as a genocide? What can the word Holocaust be applied to? Does the phrase "from the river to the sea" mean only one thing, or can there be multiple meanings attached to it? So on October 7th, when Hamas militants attacked Jewish settlements, brutally killing 1,200 people and taking more than 250 hostages, all of this exploded. Thousands of years of history and experience and persecution exploded. And the stage was already set for something like we are seeing today. With the strengthening of Hamas, a Palestinian militant organization which controlled Gaza, and Hezbollah, the Palestinian militant organization that controls the West Bank, both funded by Iran, and Syria, with the corruption of the Palestinian Authority, with the current government of Israel that has been held by a coalition of the hard right for more than a decade, and its policy of containment that some have called apartheid, although there are differences of opinion on that word as well. These take no prisoners approaches have backed everyone up against a wall with nothing left but ultimatums and more attacks. And none of them, Hamas and Hezbollah, or the nations that support them, nor the Israeli hard right, are willing to consider a two-state solution, each hoping for the removal of the other from the land that they consider theirs alone. And add in that Israel has the U.S.'s support. It's a mess. It's a mess. To harken back to our time for all ages, all the bells are ringing at the same time, and it's so loud that it hurts. Since October 7th, Israel's military offensive has resulted in over 30,000 Palestinian deaths in Gaza, most of them civilians who have no part of Hamas. There's no health care, there's no water, there's no food. 40% of homes are destroyed. Children are dying of starvation. And most of the hostages taken by Hamas are still in captivity, suffering God knows what. Some have already died. And those who manage to survive will be scarred forever. And so will their families and their communities. And so you may be wondering, and I'm wondering, although I worked on it all week, how in the world could a month of fasting, a month dedicated to quietness, offer a pathway to peace in this terrible time? Isn't that too much to hope for? But let's remember that it's the job of people of faith to hope for things that are dangerous to hope for. We can't stop hoping for peace. Remember in our reading that when someone threatens injury during Ramadan, the response is not to hurt them, but to say, I am fasting? Maybe that should be the response of the world whenever violence happens. I am fasting. I am fasting. I am fasting. Inviting the one who is threatening you to become kinder in the face of your suffering, kinder in the face of all the suffering. I am fasting, for heaven's sakes. So let's start with intentional time. It's interesting that the current negotiations for a ceasefire began with the approach of Ramadan. Imagine the power of a ceasefire during a celebration dedicated to inner quietness as one weapon after another goes silent. Even a ceasefire of 6 weeks gives 6 more weeks to negotiate another ceasefire. And perhaps that can have time to negotiate another one, and another one, and another one, until possibly a permanent one. Creating a ceasefire is creating the intentional space for a massive quieting. I am fasting. And then there is the fasting. And I don't think at this time we need the kind of fasting that wastes away the body. People in Palestine are saying, but I've been fasting for 5 months. I cannot fast anymore. We need fasting that comes from letting go of hardened opinions where one people depend on the oppression of another people to exist. Grievances that have been prized possessions need to be let go. And is it hard? Of course. It would be excruciating. That's the kind of suffering that should be welcomed. Any of us who have struggled to forgive someone knows how painful it can be to let go of the imagined right to hurt someone who has caused you pain. Let the fasting, this Ramadan, be the starving of policies and beliefs that fuel hatred and create the conditions for ongoing war. And what of prayer? There are prayers for peace in all faiths and all philosophies. Let them be prayed unceasingly until they are louder than the voices clamoring for revenge. Can that prayer change the heart of an all-powerful being? There are no guarantees, but it can change the hearts of those praying. I am fasting. And then there is generosity. Generosity of aid, food, water, medical supplies, the release of Palestinian prisoners, the release of all the Jewish hostages, generosity of recognizing each person's inherent worth and dignity, sharing the land that each side has claimed as its own, a deep caring, a true caring for those who have been the enemy, because I am fasting. And finally, there is joy. What if the delivery of aid, the freedom of the Israeli hostages, the release of Palestinian prisoners, the opening of the borders, access to the land and sea for all were the feast that was prepared as we waited for the setting sun? I am fasting no more. Even as I speak these words, part of me knows that I'm being naive and simplistic. The biggest weakness of what I've said is that it presumes equal power on each side, which is not the case. But what is wrong with being naive and simplistic and trying? To be a person of faith is not just to be anchored in the rational. It's to be anchored in the possible. Why should we not lift up each other's inherent worth and dignity over and over again, to look at all our children as our children, to see the empty prison as a gift, and the reunited hostages and families as a blessing, to proclaim that changed ideas and changed beliefs on all sides will bring that quietness that we yearn for? Shouldn't we be saying this over and over again until even one small piece becomes true? May it be so. Amen and blessed be. I invite you to rise and body your spirit for a song about freedom. 151. I wish I would know what it feels to be free.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice flame with the words printed in your orders of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be seated for one final musical gift.
Thank you for being here this morning. Your presence is always a blessing. May you have a good week. See you next Sunday. Go in peace.